Good evening. I'll bring this regular City Council meeting to order. If you could please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Mayor McPartlin.
Here.
Vice Mayor Coy.
Here.
Councilmember Dodd.
Here.
Councilmember Hill.
Here.
Councilmember Kitchen. Here. Thank you.
All right, great. Any agenda modifications, Council? No? All right, leads us up to proclamations, awards, and brief announcements. We have a hurricane preparedness presentation by Florida Power and Light. Mr. Griffin?
This evening we have Bart Gennardis and Account Manager Nancy Flickinger making a presentation. They usually make one about once a year, and they're here again at the beginning of the hurricane season to make their PowerPoint presentation.
All right, thank you.
Take it away.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As you're aware, June 1st started hurricane season, and I thought it would be a good exercise to make sure that we are prepared to tell you a little bit about what Florida Power and Light does to prepare for hurricane season and also to help with your personal preparations. As you may be aware, at Florida Power and Light, we serve 35 counties within the state of Florida. That equates to about 4.9 million customer accounts. Approximately 10 million people we believe are served by us, probably about half of Florida. The majority of our FPL customers live within 20 miles of the coast, and of course, that is what we have here in Sebastian, and that makes us very prone to hurricanes and hurricane damage. Some of the things we do, we prepare year-round for storms. We all have our regular roles. My role is an external affairs manager. And then during hurricane season, when the EOC activates, I have people that work in the EOCs, and I work with elected officials and community stakeholders to keep them advised and work through situations from the hurricane. We've done a lot of investment to improve our system to make it stronger and smarter. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, using the technology to restore service and staying connected with our customers. I think that's very important, something that in 2004 didn't exist, if you remember, from Charlie, Francis, and Jean, but we saw it worked very well during Hurricane Matthew, and we're going to talk a little bit about safety throughout and after the storm. When you look back, Hurricane Hermine impacted 112,000 customers, mainly up in the northwest portion of the state, up near our service territory in Suwannee County, in the Lake City area, in Columbia County. We have what we call automated feeder switches. This is not just for hurricane, this is every day, which helps isolate. It used to be years ago, if you had a problem on your feeder, if you were served by a feeder, which was one of the main lines through the community, if something happened to that feeder, chances are until someone got out there and fixed it, you could be out for hours depending on the damage. Now with these automated feeder switches, it isolates it and tries to cut off just the area where it's impacted, whether it be probably let's say it was an automobile accident or something like that hit a pole. That area would be isolated, but everybody else on the feeder would experience a blip, but then they would be back on because of these automated feeder switches. We also found during Hurricane Hermine that 0 strengthened poles that you see in your community, the concrete poles that are going up, failed. None of them fell over during Hurricane Hermine and Matthew. And restoration from that hurricane, tropical storm and hurricane, took approximately 24 hours, and the average duration was less than 3 hours. Then we all remember Matthew, the hurricane that was going to come in and just wash all of us away. It was going to be a Category 5, and we certainly treated that way. That impacted the East Coast and impacted 1.2 million of our customers. Thanks to your staging area, and again, I want to personally thank each of you, and especially Mr. Griffin. The cooperation we get with our staging site over at the airport is just incredible, and it helps us so much during restoration. So that's critical, so we greatly appreciate all that you guys have done. And I hope I don't want to see a hurricane come again, but if it does, I hope you all can make it over there and take a tour of it, because it really is fascinating to see. You can see on the screen there, it's like a little city in there where we get everybody, all the contractors that come down, our crews come there, the vegetation management, the food people, everybody comes and meets up at that site. But we had 8,100 FPL and embedded contractors working during that storm. We had 6,500 external resources. We had more than 200 utilities. We have joint utility agreements so that if a storm hits there, they send down crews. We send crews up to New Jersey. Even during ice storms, things like that, we'll send up help up there. More than 200 utilities and external companies from 26 states provided assistance during Hurricane Matthew, and we operated more than 22 staging sites throughout our service territory. We've invested $3 billion, $3 billion with a B, billion, since 2006 in hardening the system. 700 main power lines have been strengthened, the critical infrastructures that serve our communities. Nearly 40% of our feeders are now hardened or underground, and 1.2 million pole inspections were completed every 8 years, and we inspect approximately 150,000 poles annually. And we're going to have Anthony, who's here, talk a little bit about vegetation management, but we also have cleared 150,000 miles of vegetation. 88% of our transmission poles, those are the big structures that are high up in the air, they carry our transmission, are either steel or concrete, and we are replacing all the wooden ones. We have 223 substations that have been upgraded with surge and flood mitigation. We learned from Hurricane Sandy by going up and helping them restore service up in New Jersey and New York. We saw what happened to their substations when salt water got into there. And you look and you think, all the investment we make in our poles and everything, if you take out a substation, it doesn't matter what you've done. That takes out your system, or at least localized areas. So now what we have are a lot of these, you'll see in that picture there, we have some pumps that are within the substation that can remove the water from there, and kind of a berm around those to help keep it dry. This is a typical one up in St. Augustine. You can see flooding was significant, but thanks to, we had to de-energize, actually take down the service so no one got injured for safety, and to prevent extended damage to the equipment, and damage was successfully avoided during that storm. This is a photo of our diagnostic center that we use not just during hurricanes, but day to day. People are there right now monitoring your house so that with your smart meter, if something fails, they can see it and they can tell that we're not getting the signal from there, and it will create a trouble ticket, so we'll roll on that. We also have mobile command centers, and you can see we are using drones because some areas you can't get into and you need to assess the damage in more remote areas. And also, like I said, the smart meters are deployed. We found that our hardened feeders, those are the ones that we've upgraded, and they withstand winds in this area up to 130 miles an hour. They fared 30% better than the non-hardened, your older wooden type poles. So what Hurricane Matthew presented to us was not so much that we had to go in like we did after Charlie, Francis, and Jean, where poles got knocked over, transformers were beaten up badly. We had to go back in and put a new pole, a new transformer, put all the equipment on there, then get the wires in. This storm was more of a let's not, the Mother Nature decided let's knock down a lot of the lines. And it's much easier to go out and restring wire than it is to try to rebuild your infrastructure. And the automated feeder switches avoided more than 118,000 customer outages. And we had basically, except in remote areas, we had for the most part everyone restored 99% in 2 days after the storm. The ways we're connecting with our customers is you can get a phone call, you can get a text, as long as your phone is has a signal if you have the cell towers, and you can still reach us. We have an opportunity to give our customers updates, And that's not only during a hurricane, but day to day. Some of the communications we use, we actually reached out with automated voice calls to 3.4 million customers. And of course, we did our best to try to make sure everyone was up to date by being on Facebook and at the EOC, giving updates, and also to you, all the elected officials and community stakeholders. We try to keep them up to date as when we're going to be restored completely, because I know that's always an issue that people want to know when. Again, a little bit about Facebook. That has been a growing trend, and I found, especially in Brevard County, when elected officials wanted to reach me and I might have been on the phone, instant messaging on Facebook. So something I didn't think of, but they certainly did, and that's how a lot of people were able to reach me. Again, if you look on your phone, if you go to our webpage, we have an app for that. You can see the power tracker so that if you do have an outage at your house, you can see exactly what's going on. During storms, and we had one here in, we deployed a kiosk here in Sebastian, I believe it was over at the library, where we can provide water, and we can also provide a charging station, because that's important. People want to stay connected, because you really feel isolated if you don't have your phone anymore. Probably something we really didn't think a lot of in 2004 when we had Charlie, Francis, and Jean. Again, a little bit about our training. We have 9,000 employees. We all wear two hats, our daily job and then our storm job. And we train constantly to make sure to see how we're doing. I get the phone calls, situations, things like that to help us better understand what our role is and what we need to do. So I may be reaching out to some of you and say, what are your cell numbers if I need to get hold of you? So I'm not stalking you, I'm just trying to get information. Again, a lot of different channels that we can reach out to people and keep you informed as best as possible. And I would advise everyone to take a look at the FPL webpage and see what you can get from that and the app on your phone. As far as a family plan, I think it's always important that you know where your evacuation zone is. And hopefully, if DOT can cooperate, I-95 won't be such an issue. It'll be 3 lanes now, which will really help this area out. And of course, special medical needs, your account number is good to have if you call the 1-800-4-OUTAGE. You know, during the storm, I often hear, well, can I talk to a live body? There's only so many customer care reps and probably 1 million people thinking, well, do they know I'm out of power? So 1 million people all trying to call at once, and that's why we have the automated system. The one big thing I caution everyone is not to go near down power lines. People think, well, FPL probably killed the circuit. We don't kill the circuit unless there's a safety issue. We try to keep it to remain on. So if you see if you see a down power line, I always tell people, would you go over and grab a snake to see if it was poisonous? Well, you don't go over and grab a line to see if it's hot. Traffic signals are going to be out, and that's something everyone needs to be aware of, how to react to it when you come to a four-way. Treat every intersection like a four-way stop. Generators, I can't stress this enough. Every year we see a tragedy where someone wanting to be a good neighbor says, well, my neighbor has their windows open, they're hot, I have a generator, kind of like the have and the have-nots. Well, I'll move it into my garage, close the garage door, and then you have the carbon monoxide poisoning. And tragically, people, it seems like every storm I read about how somebody died. And to keep the ladders at least 10 feet away from our power lines. I also wanted to show a little video, if you don't mind, if I can take the time, about how we restore power, because there's always questions about, what do you guys do after the storm? We immediately start mobilizing way before the storm. We have people down in Miami who are ex-hurricane center people that have been retired, and they come in during hurricane season to help assist us, and they help build a model that'll tell us, okay, it's going to hit this area, you're probably going to see this amount of damage. So with that, we can start deploying, staging, and saying, all right, we're going to need 800 poles, we're going to need this much wire, we're going to need this much workforce, and we start bringing them in. During Hurricane Matthew, we had them stop in Lake City, and the problem was Matthew kept riding the coast. So we couldn't get them out of Lake City, And since it had touched so many counties, it touched 32 of our 35 counties, we had people that were going to bring up from Miami on that Friday, but they had damage down there they had to take care of too. So we were kind of trapped here. But immediately after the storm, we send people out, and it might be people like me or Nancy driving through neighborhoods in our private vehicles trying to assess the damage. Because people always come up and stop a troubleman and say, come over here and fix this. Well, if I don't fix that downstream, it doesn't matter what I'm going to do here. So we're out in our private vehicles assessing, because before, just like an army, you don't want to start deploying an army until you have the intelligence of what you're facing. And now you're printing up maps to tell people, so foreign crews are coming in, here's what we need you to do. Vegetation management is going and getting the trees off the poles and off the wires. Do we need to restring? How many fuses we need? This all has to be coordinated. So when people on that Friday after the storm immediately said, where are you, FPL? We were out there. You may not have seen us, and we have to go to the critical infrastructures. Critical infrastructures are like your hospitals, your water plants, and every year we meet at the EOC and we discuss what is Indian River County's biggest priority. So the hospitals, of course, are in there, the 911 communication centers. But I just wanted to show this video. Our president is in there, and he tells a little bit about how we restore power. So I think I just need to forward it here? Or?
No, just go to your main screen right there.
Oh, okay. Can I just click on this?
Yep.
I'm winging it here.
You're doing great.
Do we have audio?
Friends and neighbors, the process that we go through. When outages occur, we first repair our major infrastructure. It's very important for all of us to understand how and why we restore power the way we do, so you can explain to your friends and neighbors the process that we go through. When outages occur, we first repair our major infrastructure. Power plants, transmission lines, and substations are examples, so we can generate and deliver electricity as quickly as possible. We then restore power to critical services customers depend on, areas like police and fire stations, 911 centers, and hospitals. Then we focus on safely restoring service to the largest number of customers in the shortest amount of time until every single customer's power is back on.
So we often are asked, well, how come this area has power and this area doesn't? Are you playing favorites? And it's not, we don't play favorites. The favorites are the hospital, as we showed in that video. But as far as anything else, sometimes Mother Nature doesn't play favorites either. It's like, did a tree hit that side of the street and take you out? Because I often hear, well, my neighbor across the street has power and my side of the street doesn't. What's going on there? And then I often hear, well, when are we going to be back on? A lot of that depends. As we said in there, if you have a feeder that serves 10,000 people, that's probably going to be a bigger priority than one that serves 100 people. And I get my neighbors calling me saying, can't you pull some strings? And I always tell them, I want to be last, and they don't like hearing that. So I want to set the example so that when people call me up, they say, well, do you know what it's like? Yes, I'm still out of power. And I was out of power during Matthew for about, I think it was about 30 hours. So enough to get really toasty in there and get very uncomfortable. I'd like to turn it over, before we have any questions, to Anthony, just to talk a little bit about our vegetation management, because that is something critical, I think, for Sebastian, Indian River County, of what we do to be proactive with our vegetation management. Anthony, would you like to take over, please?
Yeah, good evening. Thanks for having us here. Yeah, just want to give you a brief overview of our vegetation program. And again, thanks for letting us use the airport there. That was basically where I lived for about 4 or 5 days there during Matthew, and it was a great site, huge help. So just to give you an idea, though, of a lot of the proactive measures we take, most of the vegetation work is done before the storm season, by design. Once we're in the storm season, it's more just maintaining from there. Usually we trim out all of our main feeders, the critical infrastructure that feed the hospital, schools, all the 911 centers. Those are typically all trimmed out by 7/31, so July 31st. At this time in Sebastian, all of them are done at this point. So, those are the main lines. Another thing we see, of course, is we take a lot of customer requests. We see an uptick in those. So we basically go out and inspect on a 21-day, timeline and assign tree work as needed there. So usually this time of the year, we're seeing an uptick quite a bit. So we're taking care of all those. And then more of the neighborhood lines, which are probably the ones you see in the backyard that feed your house, we call them laterals. We're doing about 550 miles maintenance on those this year in the Treasure Coast. Most of it's south of here. A lot of Sebastian was done last year. I know we had talked about some of that last year. So the lateral neighborhood lines are in good shape. And another thing, as we continue to improve the feeders with the concrete poles and the smart switches and all that, when we rebuild those lines, typically our goal now is to mow out those right-of-ways and keep them that way. So, we've done some mowing along US 1 here, up in Sebastian, and, we just continue to open up those right-of-ways. So a storm like Matthew, for example, if you get winds around 100 miles an hour, it doesn't matter how much trimming you can do, that's going to push over live, healthy trees. So we're just trying to clear out the right-of-ways at this point. So just keeping to, if you're going to put up stronger poles and smarter switches, you got to get smarter with the vegetation. And we just keep increasing the amount of vegetation we remove. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of our program. And any questions that you guys would have?
I do have a quick one. Y'all are in my neighborhood. Last week or so have been over. How often do you come through? Because I didn't keep track when the last time you came through.
Good question. So typically those feeder lines, the bigger ones, those are on a 3-year maintenance cycle. So we'll come through and trim those out every 3 years. Now that's to a maintenance specification, which is anywhere from 10 to 30 feet, depending on species. But we look at those lines every year, so at least every year. Now the neighborhood lines, which I think that's what you'd be referring to.
Yeah.
Those are typically on an 8-year cycle. Or I'm sorry, a 6-year
I thought it was,
average.
might be 6.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a 6-year average. But with that being said, we've got about 60 crews in the Treasure Coast working pretty much every day of the week. And they'll be doing a lot of work, a lot of hotspot work. So, in 6 years, there's some stuff that pops up, the customer inspections. Also, with the new line construction and all of that, you might see us out there off cycle. That doesn't necessarily mean maintenance is only one part of our program. We've also got corrective maintenance, customer requests. So we could be doing a number of things there. So
No, they're going through
Yeah.
on a street by street. They've been there for at least 1 or 2 weeks. So don't tell them to keep it up because they haven't gotten back behind my house yet.
we'll keep going.
Could someone just remind folks about trimming the trees from the pole to the house? Would you just reinforce the fact that the homeowner is obligated to trim the trees from the pole to the house? And sometimes people don't realize that. And what do you call that line that goes in there?
Service drop.
The service drop.
Yeah, so that is a customer responsibility from the pole to the house. That's something we come out, and if you schedule a tree crew and schedule with us, we'll come out, disconnect that line for safety. You can have a tree crew do it, your regular tree trimmer. So typically, that's a lot of the customer requests we get, and we have door hangers we leave. We communicate, it's outreach and education, letting people know how to go about that service. But yeah, that is one of the big drivers of our customer request is hey, why didn't you trim out this line when you came through? And typically that's a customer responsibility, which, I didn't know that before I started here either. So it's we distribute that in the door card and, when we talk to customers. So
it's better not to plant the tree near the service drop line because that's the homeowner's responsibility.
Yep.
And or get in there and trim the tree back before you have to call FPL to disconnect the line to trim the tree.
Absolutely. I mean, that brings up a good point. We're all about right tree, right place, and we can go out and trim hundreds and hundreds of miles a year. If people continue to plant trees in the easement, especially fast-growing trees, we'll never keep up with it. So we've got a lot of documents and brochures on that as well. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
We spend a lot of money trimming other people's trees.
I know. Thank you, Bart.
All right, thank you all very much. Good night.
It leads us up to brief announcements. We have the annual 4th of July Freedom Festival, 7 a.m. The Substance Awareness Council will be having their 5K run and walk from Riverview Park north on Indian River Drive. At 8 a.m., the opening ceremonies at the Veterans Memorial Park. 8:30 a.m., the parade from the Community Center south to Riverview Park will begin. At 9:45, the skydiver exhibition will commence, and there'll be festivities in the park all day long and fireworks over the lagoon after sunset. Any other brief announcements, Council? All right, leads us up to our item 7, our consent agenda.
Move approval?
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Vice Mayor Coy,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd,
Yes.
Councilmember Hill,
Yes.
Councilmember Kitchen,
Yes.
Mayor McPartlin.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Brings us up to item 8, committee reports and appointments. 8A, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. Ms. Williams?
Thank you. Yes, I have 3 candidates for you. Joanne Webster would like to serve again, and your alternate member, Corinne Gilroy, would like to move up to a regular member position, and then I have Jim Sunnycap.
All right. I think, I'd like to see Joanne, you continue on, and then Corinne move up to the original spot, and then Mr. Sumney take the alternate position?
That's a motion. I'll second it.
All right. Any further discussion on that? All right. Well, thank you for those continuing to serve, and welcome aboard, Mr. Sunnycap. All right, that brings us up to the Police Pension Board. We have 2 spots and 2 applicants.
Yes, Mr. Williamson had another commitment, but he would like to be considered, and we have Chris Vickers here if you would like to interview her.
All right, well, I think they're both fine candidates. Do you want to,
I think the resumes are really good from both of them, so I'll move that we appoint the 2 candidates to the board.
Second?
all right, that sounds good to me. I think we got a consensus, so thank you, Ms. Vickers, and good luck, Mr. Williamson. Thank you for your service on our boards.
Thank you.
All right, leads us up to public hearings. We have none. Unfinished business, item 10A, approved velocity lease extension. Mr. Griffin.
Yes, sir. In September of 2015, council approved a lease at the airport with Velocity for Hangar B. After the 2-year lease, they had an option for 28 years, which would bring it up to 30 years. We have a letter from Mr. Dwayne Swing, the head of Velocity, and they're requesting that option on that lease. With this option, that will increase the lease rate 29% to $233 a square foot, per square foot, and that's subject to yearly CPIs, and staff is recommending approval.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move staff recommendation.
Second.
All right. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this lease extension? Any further council discussion?
No.
Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Councilmember Dodd,
Yes.
Councilmember Hill,
Yes.
Councilmember Kitchen,
Yes.
Mayor McPartlin,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coy.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Brings us up to public input. Anyone from the public wish to speak on an item not already on the agenda? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Ben Hucker, City of Sebastian. Since we were talking about Matthew, that hurricane came around October 6th to the 9th in our area. We're now 9 months with no activity shown at the Yacht Club, Main Street, or the working waterfront. A private contractor, I believe, took out one dock. I thought we had a limit of time to do this, to get FEMA money. What's really going on? This is 9 months. As of July 4th or 5th, that's 10 months, from October 6th to July 6th. Help. We're a fishing community, supposedly. We spent a lot of money putting in parking lots for trailer parking, et cetera, around the park. We're putting in bathrooms. I noticed that right away, we just approved a bathroom down at the working waterfront. They've already marked it out and it's ready to go. They're starting on it. But we're sitting here with no docks, nothing done. I understand. I asked 2 months now, and the last answer I received was, well, they are progressing because they've ordered the concrete poles. They could have ripped everything out during that time when they're ordering the poles. What's really happening here? Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. I wish the city could just rebuild these things and not have to follow any guidelines by the state or the federal government. And I think at the last meeting we discussed this again, Mr. Griffin, and they're building the pylons off-site and then they're going to bring them in. Do you have anything else to update on that?
They were going to deploy prior to July 4th, which is a lot of activity down there at the boat ramp. The first deployment's going to be at the Yacht Club dock, and they asked me how I felt about moving that back a week, and I said yes to July 10th because of the activity around the 4th of July. The pilings, concrete pilings, are being built off-site, and rather than have them mobilize and demo, that obviously would cost a lot more money. So it's not part of their work plan. They deploy, demo, and install at the same time. So Brothers Construction is building the concrete pilings, and they're supposed to be on site on July 10th.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else from the public? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Jim Sunnycab.
Good evening.
I'd like to mention that we're going to be in the parade this year, and we're going to make this in honor of the K-9 police dog that died in a hot car. And if anybody would like to walk with us, just come on down and join us. And also keep in mind the blacktop's hot, so if you bring a dog, bring it like in a wagon or a buggy or something, because that blacktop really gets hot on their paws. And that's a long ways to walk a dog. But if anybody would like to join us, just come on down and pray and just look for us and join in. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public wish to speak on something? All right. That leads us up to new business, item 12A, resolution number R-17-20. Mr. Griffin.
Yes, sir. Recently, there have been changes to Florida statutes, Chapter 333, regarding airport development around areas that aren't necessarily controlled by the airport. That takes into account actually what's happening at Sebastian Airport. Sebastian Airport, in a lot of areas, is surrounded by county land, county-controlled land under their jurisdiction. A Florida statute requires either one of two things to happen: enter into an interlocal agreement to adopt, administer, and enforce a set of airport protection zoning regulations, or two, create a joint airport protection zoning board to adopt, administer, and enforce those airport protection zoning procedures. Recently, the county has entered into an interlocal agreement with the city of Vero Beach regarding their airport, similarly situated as we are next to county jurisdiction. So now it's our turn, and this has come before us. The county has proposed this. We are recommending approval, and we are really optioning for, number one, enter into this interlocal agreement to adopt, administer, and enforce zoning regulations with regard to development around airport property. So we are recommending approval.
What's that? You say something?
No.
Oh, okay. I make a motion to approve resolution number R-17-20.
Second.
Anyone from the public wish to speak on this interlocal agreement? Any further council discussion? Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Councilmember Hill?
Yes.
Councilmember Kitchen?
Yes.
Mayor McPartlin?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coy?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Brings us up to item 12B, approved capital lease purchase agreement with the new golf carts. Mr. Griffin.
Yes, sir. The current lease purchase agreement we have for golf carts right now is up in November of this year. So we are in the process of trying to replace those carts, and it has come to our attention that there is a good piggyback contract that we could add on to and for our brand new golf carts. This is written up a little bit where it might be a little bit confusing, that some might think that this is a capital purchase all at once for $259,000 for these golf carts. We're going to be, it's a capital lease, so that's actually a lease purchase. We will own these at the end. This is a 5-year, 60-month lease purchase. We will be paying less per month than we are now for a much better golf cart. So we are recommending approval.
Okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I think just to make sure this is perfectly clear, the city is not spending $259,000 on golf carts. The golf course is actually purchasing 80 golf carts. They're financing those just like some of us would a car. They're paying for them over 60 months. They're paying for them out of cart revenue at the golf course. It's not being paid for from city funds. So anyone who looks at this and thinks that the city, through their general revenue, is buying the carts is mistaken. It's not being done that way. It's being done out of the golf course. The $35,000 that's referenced here in the balloon payment on the existing loan that's outstanding is being paid for, or will be paid out of the golf cart revenue or the golf course revenue as well. That's not being paid for out of the city's general fund either. So none of these things, these are all budget neutral to the city itself, and they're being paid for out of revenues from the golf rental fees. Probably they may be out of other revenue fees, but out of the golf course itself.
That's correct.
So this is not a capital expenditure for the city, and it's not part of our 5-year capital budget. It's basically a golf course operational item. So if anybody out there thinks that we're spending money on golf carts, that's not what's happening here.
That's correct. The payment for the golf carts will come out $46.99.20 per month will come out of the operational budget for the golf carts.
Yep. So this is not a budget issue, so I don't think it has to reside through the 17-18 budget or the 16-17 budget. None of them have an issue with that. So given the fact it's really an operational expense from the golf course, and they could basically do this at any time, I move approval.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this golf cart purchase? Any further council discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of questions for Greg. I think,
Yes.
Greg, if I could. Now, the last agreement we had, was it a straight lease rather than a lease purchase? The agreement we had with the current golf carts we have, or was that a lease purchase as well?
On the Yamahas, yes.
There's a lease purchase as well?
It was a straight-out purchase.
Okay, so
Straight
we
out
purchased those. And then the intention, I would assume, because this is a 5-year lease purchase, is to every 5 years rotate the vehicles?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is going to sound like a bad question, but it's really not really public. The golf carts have 2 sand buckets on them, one on either side. Now, I've seen a lot of golf carts that have an actual cooler on one side and a sand bucket on the other, and I think that would be a pretty efficient use of one of those sides if that were no difference in cost. They almost are exactly the same size and everything. They go in the same place. So, I mean, a cooler to keep your towels cold or something like that, because, you use towels to wipe off. But I would love to see coolers out there on one side of the golf cart. And that would solve a lot of the issues that they have in the kitchen, also trying to keep coolers going in and out, and, the bev carts or the towel people or whatever to keep those towels cool.
Sure. I'm sure we could do that. Actually, on the Yamahas, it was a cooler that they converted into a sand bucket, so I'm sure that won't be a problem.
Well, just one person, but I just consider that
We
as,
can look into
a
that.
potential option.
Well, Randy was really the one who did the investigation on this, and he's made the connections for this purchase. There was a discrepancy, and you may pick up on it if you look at the Plantation Preserve bid and award, as opposed to the one that's in your packet, where it did not include the golf bag cover, the little umbrella. And that was part of the negotiation. Wanted to make sure that we had that, because I think that's important. And Randy went back to the well and got that approved and corrected the record on that. So, and the same price. The price is the same. But as far as the coolers, I want to make sure Randy makes the phone call tomorrow, see if he can negotiate that, see if it's doable. If it's not, it might be a higher cost or something like that. What I'm hearing tonight is we have the possibility of getting this approved at $46.99.20 per month, and that's what I want to zero in on and make sure we have an agreement, and I'm cleared to sign that agreement at that cost.
Plus, if I want to add, the interest rate they're offering me at this time is 3.49 for 60 months. In the industry, they're normally closer to 4. By doing the method we're doing on really a lease purchase, it's going to be more beneficial to us, and that also saved us additional money. And one other thing for the citizens to know, if we get this approved tonight, I get much more per golf cart sending them to auction than I do trading them in. My trade-in in the packet is $1,350. I'm averaging over $1,700 a cart when I trade them in. Right now, with only 9 holes being open at the golf course, I can dispose of the carts, leave them, Greg, with 40 until the new ones come in. And by this being approved tonight, I can get delivery before the first tournament in September.
All right. Very good job, Randy.
Thanks.
I've seen your commercials in the middle of the night selling golf carts, so great job. Any other question for staff concerning this? All right, got a motion and a second. Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Councilmember Kitchen?
Yes.
Mayor McPartlin?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coy?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Councilmember Hill?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bring us up. Mr. Griffin, you have any matters for us?
Yes, I do. July 4th collection schedule for waste management. That should be up on Channel 25, but that's on July 4th is on a Tuesday. So customers scheduled for Tuesday, July 4th will be serviced Wednesday, July 5th. There will be no yard waste service July 4th. Customers will receive yard waste service the following week on Tuesday, July 11th. There will be no recycling service Thursday, July 6th. Customers will receive recycling service on Friday, July 7th. And that is all I have, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Ms. Williams, you have anything for us? No? All right, leads us up to city council matters. We have the charter officer evaluations. If the council members have gotten together with the members, I have to apologize. I am at fault. I was hoping to have the time to fill mine out and meet with the charter officers before.
You're not the only one remiss. I have to offer my apologies. My computer, it's not a good excuse, but my computer did crash. And so I'm using that excuse, but I'm remiss also. And by next meeting, I will have met my obligation.
Well, I have met with both charter officers sitting in the room right now. I did not provide them with a written evaluation, as I don't feel that's necessary. I did have a sit-down with them, and I think we fully understand where we stand.
Yeah, I mean, I completed the forms. I've met with the city clerk and city manager. I haven't met with the city attorney, but I think right now that's very far down on his price list. All I can say is that in his worst day, his legal advice is better than most lawyers, so I don't have any issues with that at all, so.
I also met with both Jeanette and Joe, and I have not met with the city attorney either, unfortunately.
I'm not sure exactly what we're supposed to do. The resolution.
I'll make a recommendation to provide increases to the charter officers per contractual obligations.
Second.
Okay, per what? I didn't hear that part.
Our contractual obligations. It's written into their, I believe it's per whatever the
Okay.
union negotiations provide,
Yes,
so
sorry.
it's a contractual obligation, so my recommendation is just to stick with that.
Yeah.
All right. Then evaluations, whatever you write up, they can request from Jeanette, file them on whatever you wrote down. I mean, all I would say is I haven't had the opportunity to sit down specifically, but I do communicate regularly, and they're all aces in my book. And as you said about Mr. Ginsburg, I actually meet with a lot of attorneys and have a bunch of them, and nobody's given me better advice than Mr. Ginsburg, as well as Jeanette has always been very pleasant. I have never had a complaint, always proactive in any of my requests. You do them the day before I even ask you. And Mr. Griffin, we talk, I don't know, twice a day. You always answer my calls. Now I know to call you at 7:30 in the morning before you're with somebody, and then usually we talk again at night. So, but anybody from the public wish to speak on the motion and the second concerning the contractual raise for the charter officers?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Input from public is under certain items, and it's specifically not under council matters. That's why I believe this is under council matters, because we had at times in the past the public come in and give their evaluations, and we want to make sure that we don't get back to a situation where that occurs.
I remember that. So, yeah.
I mean, if that's the pleasure of the council, I don't think anybody could say something bad, but of course they always could. But if that's the council's pleasure, I'm fine with that. Thank you very much for your service and continued service, and really appreciate it.
We need to vote on that motion, I believe.
Yep.
Mayor McPartlin?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coy?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Councilmember Hill?
Yes.
Councilmember Kitchen?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know this is a little bit out of order, but I neglected to mention something that is fairly important. May I present?
Absolutely.
Recently, we were served with notice of an appeal from a special magistrate action in a building code violation situation. I conferred with our city attorney about this item. The appeal goes to the circuit court in Indian River County, and felt like myself or Mr. Ginsburg right now were unable to handle that appeal. So he agreed with me that I pursue engaging outside counsel. I have an engagement letter that I am ready and willing to sign. I just wanted to let council know that I will effect that tomorrow if I have consensus here tonight. I am anticipating the charges for this service will be below my spending authorization. If it gets anywhere near towards my spending authorization, I will bring that to council in a formal agenda transmittal.
All right, that sounds good to me. Anyone else?
Can I comment on that for a
Sure.
second? Okay, I think that's a great idea, but I don't want to say this in such a way it sounds bad, but I think we might want to think about increasing that engagement letter to include other services that we might need during the interim time while Mr. Ginsburg's getting well again. I'm not talking about replacing the city attorney. I'm just saying that way you've got a clear path if there are issues that come up, that you can go to an attorney that's comfortable with the city and is comfortable with Mr. Ginsburg, and they can work together on that. Somebody can do the groundwork for him.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think it's time to just make sure we cover ourselves too while giving Mr. Ginsburg the appropriate amount of time and space that he needs while we still wait to see what's happening here.
Yeah, I think you get an attorney that he's comfortable, that she knows how to do her job, therefore it's someone that he's comfortable working with, and that individual could work with him when there's issues that come up, and I think that might relieve some pressure, maybe, I hope. So
I would advise a separate engagement letter.
that's fine.
Do I have a consensus from council that that would be the same person that Mr. Ginsburg's comfortable with? And
Yes,
That's fine with me.
I agree.
Anyone else, any input on that?
That's fine, as long as it's,
All right.
they know it's on a temporary basis until we decide what we weren't going to do.
Yep.
yes, ma'am.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. Mr. Hill, you have anything?
Oh, yeah, just real quick. Someone came up today and had some concerns about the docks. And I think that's a legitimate concern that people would have out there. And I've been hearing it a lot. So, I think that, when we get a lot of complaints from certain individuals, it sometimes seems like, oh, here we go again. This, it goes right over our heads or, whatever, because certain individuals seem to like to complain a lot. But I'm hearing a lot of concern about the docks. So, it's a legitimate concern. We're not always perfect. And so let's just be clear. So, we probably should have and could have done a better job with the situation with our docks. We're not perfect. We are moving in the direction. Those docks have been purchased. They will be repaired, and we will move on, and we will be a great fishing village. But, we have to make sure that we don't just completely and utterly dismiss certain concerns, and that we realize that although I believe that we do very, very good, and we're mostly very good at what we do, and I mean the collective, all those who work for the city and this 5, I believe we do very good things. But there are times when we need to just step back and realize that we're not perfect, and some of those concerns are legitimate and should be, and not an apology, but I get you. We could have done better. Maybe we'll definitely do better next time. Something to that effect.
Anything else? No. All right, Ms. Kinchin?
No, I just want to wish everyone a safe and happy 4th of July.
All right. And then I'm along the same lines, a safe and happy 4th of July. I don't know about the rest of you, but sometimes I have nothing to do at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I watch a lot of replays of the meetings in the Parks and Rec Committee and the Budget and Review Committee. And we have a lot of fine volunteers in our community that volunteer their time and efforts to those committees, and I really appreciate that. And again, during the 4th of July, I mean, we have a lot of fantastic city employees that are out there working hard, as well as our law enforcement and police department. So on the 4th of July, when you're out and about and enjoying your day, and you see the city employees and you see our city's police department, just thank them for the time that they're doing and doing a great job so we can have a lot of fun. And again, Joe, thank you for all your efforts on leading the whole team. You're not the boss, you're a leader, and it's not like they just do it because you tell them to do it. They really respect you, and I admire your leadership. So, thank you. Ms. Coy?
Yes, thank you. I do want to make sure everyone has a safe 4th of July and comes out and enjoys all the activities that we have down in the park. Just a little matter on the parade, just a reminder, and the chief of police is here in the back of the room. For those who think it's a great sport to get those big old soaker guns out and soak folks who are walking by, whether they be in the band or just driving their little golf carts, for some people that could be very, very, very bad, and it's not allowed. Please do not encourage your children or adults. Please don't do it. There are people like me who have these little hearing aids that are not waterproof. And if water gets in there's $5,000 sitting in my ears. I also have some new lenses in my eyes that are very, very expensive that I had to pay for out of my pocket that I don't need squirted or soaked or get wet. The band folks do not appreciate their instruments getting soaked and uniforms. So, bottom line, don't do it. You can do it to yourselves. Step aside. Don't get your neighbors wet while you're watching the parade. And don't shoot at the people passing by. It's not cute. It's not fun. And you will be asked not to do it. And I don't know, I leave it up to the police department with what they do with you when you're caught. So anyway, let's all have a good time and a great day. See you down there.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Duck?
No, sir, nothing.
All right. Being no further business, this meeting's in adjournment. Good night.